What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut, and today we're going to look at the MLB standings as of the morning of September 20th, 2021. It has been over a month and a half since I did one of these videos. I apologize. I got sidetracked with a few other projects, but here we are. We're going to start off by discussing the AL Central. So right now, the White Sox are currently in control of this division with a commanding lead over Cleveland, Detroit, Kansas City, and arguably the league's biggest disappointment of the season, Minnesota. So Chicago's been doing pretty good. Now, they have suffered some injuries, of course. They had Nick Madrigal. He got hurt, done for the year. They ended up trading him away. They had Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert both get hurt early on in the season. So both are back now. Luis Robert's looking better than Eloy Jimenez, who's cooled off after a pretty hot start upon his return. Still, good team, good players. The pitching staff, I've been very skeptical of them at times, but we have seen Lance Lynn. He's been doing pretty good. Carlos Rodon's been doing pretty good. This team definitely has the ability to make a run. Imagine if they still had Yermin. That's all I'm going to say. Imagine if Yermin was still doing what he was doing at this point, a few months back. They are probably trending down a little bit right now, but you can never count out this team when they have Jose Abreu. Now, Cleveland, on the flip side, sitting in second place in this division, it's not really Cleveland's a second place team. I mean, they are below 500 right now, but you do have to give them credit. I counted this team out early on, but they have done pretty respectable considering the fact that, their ace, Shane Bieber, has been on the IL since mid-June, and Aaron Civale went on the IL shortly after him, and he just came back 2 or 3 starts ago. So both those guys were on the 60-day IL, and of course, Plesac has been struggling this year as well. So not exactly the best. Cal Quantrill has been one of the better players, though, since the All-Star break, especially for the team. He's looked very good. He's been a pleasant surprise for the team. They have to be exciting. The offense is a bit of a question mark still outside of Jose Ramirez, of course. They do have some decent players, including Miles Straw, but, you're not going to win a championship if Miles Straw is a starter on your team. I love the guy, but Detroit's been doing decent. The Tigers, just like Cleveland, I counted them pretty much done before the season began. I've said, enjoy the rebuild, embrace the rebuild, and all that kind of stuff. They've been pretty decent. They've been competing. It's kind of crazy. They had a pretty garbage April, but they've been a solid, possibly above 500 team since April. So you got to give them credit. This is a young team with a lot of talent, a lot of potential. Of course, they did have a no-hitter earlier in the year, but, Detroit, you got a bright future. There's not a lot of, massive pieces right now that I can point to and say this guy's going to be, a potential superstar 3-4 years down the road. But once Miggy's contract's off the books, and I love Miggy, don't get me wrong, but once his contract's off the books, Detroit is not afraid to spend money. So Detroit will be a team to watch out for in the future. Kansas City's Kansas City. I respect what Kansas City is. They're a solid team, and they're just one of those small market teams that they like playing small ball. I like that, Whit Merrifield, I believe, still leads the league in stolen bases right now. I love that. Adalberto Mondesi's finally back from his third IL stint. He's been looking okay since returning. So, there's them. But of course, if you're talking about the Royals, no one cares about these guys. People want to talk about, Salvador Perez, who's just been killing it lately. Killing it. It's insane how good he's doing. He's hitting so many homers. And it's kind of crazy to me that he's not even being discussed for AL MVP. It just goes to show you how good Guerrero Jr. and Ohtani are doing this year. Still, not the best season for Kansas City, but could be worse. Minnesota, this team, like I said earlier, probably the biggest disappointment in baseball. I don't even know what to say. This team, coming off back-to-back division titles, they stink. They traded away some of their better players. Of course, Nelson Cruz traded away. Jose Barrios traded away. So they're kind of trotting out some relative no-names. At least Joe Ryan made his debut for the team. He's looked decent in I believe, 3 or 4 starts at this point. So at least they got something out of Nelson Cruz. Other than that, Minnesota has just been kind of a lost cause. Next, we have the AL West, which Houston has a decent lead in. Oakland sits in second. Seattle, also above 500, sits in third. And then you have Los Angeles, a few games behind Seattle. And in the basement, we have Texas. Houston, this team just never gives up. Everyone wants to see them lose. They're probably the most hated team, not in New York or Boston, but they just continue to play well. And it definitely upsets a lot of people. So this team is good. I mean, right now, some of their key players aren't producing amazing stat-wise. Alex Bregman's not doing amazing. But Kyle Tucker has really upped his game. I have to mention Kyle Tucker. He's just dominating recently in the past few games. He's had so many multi-hit games. I have him in fantasy league. That's how I know this. He's just been hitting the cover off the ball. So he's been so good. He's been dominant. Kyle Tucker, great player. Other than Tucker, the pitching staff, you still have some stars. If Verlander was healthy this year, this team would have even more of an ability to make a big run, a postseason run, but I don't know if I trust the pitching staff enough. I like the young pitching staff that they have here, but Luis Garcia has been cooling off of late. Framber Valdez has been cooling off of late. Zach Greinke's still doing Zach Greinke things. He's still pretty good. He has a couple bad starts here and there, but still, I like what they offer. Oakland is also doing good. Now, Oakland, this is a team that they have a tough end-of-season schedule. They actually play just Houston and Seattle to close out the season from here on out before the playoffs. So if they make the playoffs, they will be ready. But it's going to be easier said than done for them. This is a team that I mentioned before when the season started that they were going to rely on their two Matts, Olsen and Chapman, to bounce back and have strong seasons. One of them, Olsen, did bounce back. The other, Chapman, had a very mediocre season, has had a very mediocre season up to this point. He's had those power stretches, but he's been mediocre. He's still, a gold glover on defense, but pitching-wise, this team can still use some help. But, Oakland at least has the ability to possibly make a run. I don't know if they will. Right now, they're on the outside looking in for the playoffs. Seattle, they're one win away from finishing 500, so kind of rooting for them. Seattle is doing better than expected this year. I thought they were a couple of years behind, but here we are. Jarred Kelenic is starting to produce. He had a very abysmal start to the season. Now he's producing in the month of September. That's always good. Outside of Kelenic, though, and of course Mitch Haniger, this team still has some question marks. Kyle Seager, is he really a long-term answer for this team? They have so many young players in the minors. Seattle has a good chance of making a run, but I just don't see it happening this year. Los Angeles is among the league's biggest disappointments this year, but we'll give them a little bit of a break. Like Mike Trout has missed most of the season. He's probably done for the year. It's not 100% officially confirmed, but I don't remember if it was the GM or the manager basically said, yeah, we don't expect to activate him back from the IL. So, it's a shame. He was a great player, but he is a great player. He's obviously arguably the best player of all time, but here we are talking about, too bad he didn't play. Anthony Rendon also had a bad year, didn't play much this year, done for the year. Shohei Ohtani is up there for MVP. I would still vote for him over Guerrero Jr. just because of what he does as a pitcher. He had another dominant outing a couple days ago as a pitcher. So Ohtani, love what he can do. Love his two-way ability. He's a once-in-a-generation type of player. I don't know if we've had a player that's hit as well and pitched respectably since Babe Ruth. So if you're in the same sentence as Babe Ruth, you're doing something right. You are doing something right. But the team, they got to figure out what the heck's going wrong. Texas, we knew Texas was in a rebuild. They knew they were in a rebuild. They're at the bottom of the league in a lot of categories. Adolis Garcia is at least doing pretty dang well. But other than him, there's no one really in Texas that I'm like, if I lived in Texas, I would not be lining up to go to games there. They don't have any players that I'd love to see. They traded away a lot of the players. I hope you guys enjoy Spencer Howard. I thought he had a bright future, but that was then, this is now. You guys gave away Gallo, you gave away Gibson, so we'll have to see. Next, we have the gauntlet that is the AL East. Tampa Bay currently has a decent, sizable 6.5 game lead in the division. Boston, Toronto, and New York are all neck and neck with each other. And then, unfortunately for Baltimore, they're just in a gauntlet. So Tampa Bay has been, as expected, one of the better teams in the league. Unfortunately for Tampa, they did lose Tyler Glasnow for the season. He had to get Tommy John. He's not going to be back maybe through the 2022 season. Knowing Tampa, they love to be extremely cautious with injuries. So it's a very disappointing thing. But still, this team has a lot of potential. They had a surging hot August, and if I recall, they haven't been doing that great in September. So hopefully they can turn the game around because the three teams behind them are all very competitive. They have some talent, though. I mean, this is a team that loves to implement the platoon system. So, if you have a lefty or a righty, it doesn't matter. They'll just move around their whole lineup. Wander Franco, he started off poorly. He has been as advertised recently. So shout out to him. Shout out to this team for, I wish they called him up earlier, but it is what it is. Now, Boston sits in second in this division, and they are coming in. They're a hot team right now. Boston, they started off weak, but they ended up playing well. So they have an easy, relatively speaking, schedule to close out the season. So they have a crucial matchup against the Yankees this weekend. That's going to be fun. I'm going to try to watch those games. But, Boston, they're trending in the correct direction. They're trending up right now. They had a really poor time, but now their players are starting to produce again. They are, Bobby Dahlbeck isn't doing what he was a couple weeks ago, but he's still producing. Devers has cooled off a bit, but, they did deal with a certain viral illness that slowed them down, but here we are. They're back. They look like they're going to they're going to be able to make some noise in the playoffs. Toronto has currently jumped New York, and Toronto is also one of the hotter teams in baseball. This offense is just elite. There's nothing more I can say about that. Guerrero Jr., he's going to get a lot of votes for AL MVP. He's doing so well. It's just, Ohtani's having a once-in-a-generation type of season. I talked to my grandpa about Ohtani. He was born in the mid-30s, late 30s. And he's like, Ohtani, I've never seen a guy like this. So that tells you something right there. But Guerrero still doing amazing. No disrespect to him. Robbie Ray has been one of the best pitchers since, honestly, one of the better pitchers in the season. One of the best pitchers since August. That's for sure. He's been doing great. This team, they have Jose Barrios still. Hyunjin Ryu's unfortunately on the IL right now. But they still have a lot of potential in Toronto. George Springer's starting to regress a little bit, but he's still a strong, talented player. Gurriel's doing good. So this team has a lot of potential. Bo Bichette's doing pretty good. This team definitely looks like they're going to make a run. New York has slid lately. New York is trending in the wrong direction, at least relatively speaking, unless you're a Yankees fan. Then you're definitely upset. They are pretty cold. They had a 13-game winning streak, but since that winning streak, they've got ice cold. So that's where we're at with the Yankees. This is a team that we knew was going to be extremely streaky. Very good, very bad. So if this team's hot come playoff time and they make the playoffs, watch out for New York. There are so many batters here. Rizzo's been trending downward. Gallo just started heating up before he dealt with a stiff neck, I believe it was. So, it's going to be tough for them. Gleyber Torres is back, and he's not producing home runs, but he's still getting on base now. We'll have to see. Lastly, Baltimore. I mean, if you're a Baltimore Orioles fan, I feel for you. You're in this gauntlet of a division. You never had a chance. Cedric Mullins, though, a very good bright spot for this team. So I'm hoping that you guys at least have a bright future, because I don't like seeing the AL East just... I don't want to see any team outside of Tampa or Baltimore in the top of the AL East, because the other three, Toronto's okay, but New York and Boston, no thank you. Next, we'll go to the NL Central. The Milwaukee Brewers are currently in a commanding first place position here. St. Louis sits behind them, with Cincinnati breathing on behind them. Chicago in fourth, Pittsburgh in fifth. Milwaukee has clinched a playoff berth. We have three teams that have clinched playoff berths. All three are in the NL. Milwaukee's been doing pretty good of late. Their offense is slowly starting to catch up to their pitching. Now, of course, the big names for their pitching staff: Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns. Burns has been doing better lately than Woodruff, but still, it's gonna be interesting to see how they handle this with the inning limits. specifically with Burns. Still, though, these two guys, plus their elite bullpen, Josh Hader, Devin Williams, they're ready to make a run. They want to compete. They're not going to be afraid to, have Burns and Woodruff miss a start if they have to. They're already using a six-man rotation. Eric Lauer's looking pretty good as well at the right time. They'll probably use him as a bullpen arm in the playoffs. Milwaukee definitely has a chance. You got to think, if Christian Yelich was doing 2018 Christian Yelich stuff, 2019 Christian Yelich stuff, how good would this team be? St. Louis is probably the hottest team in baseball right now, and they basically control their own destiny at this point. They are blistering hot, so they're ready. Adam Wainwright is doing his thing. He's not an elite superstar, but he is very good. He's just so reliable, old reliable, if you will. And this team, red hot, they're ready for the playoffs. They have a lot to prove this year. A lot of people were counting them out early on. They made some big moves in recent years with NL West teams to get Goldschmidt and Arenado. Now, Goldschmidt's doing decent. Arenado's doing decent. Hopefully these two guys can help the team. I mean, unless they play the Phillies in the playoffs, but that's neither here nor there. St. Louis, good team, a lot of talent, and I'd like to see Flaherty come back and be able to have a healthy year. Cincinnati has been one of those teams that they've been iffy of late. They have had some injuries. Of course, Jesse Winker has missed a good amount of time. Castellanos has had some time where he's been hurt. But Castellanos is back. He's not, April, May Castellanos, but he's still very good Nick Castellanos. I love what Castellanos brings to the table. Of course, Luis Castillo has bounced back from a putrid April, May. So at least it looks like they're getting him back into shape. There's that going for him. Other than that, the Reds, they have some big names. Tyler Naquin was one of the more bigger surprises to start off the season. He has cooled off considerably. He's currently on the IL. I don't think he'll be back in time for the season when the season comes to an end. So it was a good season for him. Still, though, Cincinnati, very interesting team. Fun to watch. They hit a lot of homers, and they allow a good amount of homers as well. Quick shout out to Tyler Mahle as well. He's been a very reliable pitcher. He doesn't dazzle you every game, but he always seems to get a quality start. So Chicago, this is a team that we've already discussed the selling that they did at the trade deadline, so we're not going to get into that. But I'm going to give them big time credit here for finding Frank Schwindel off of waivers from Oakland. He's just been killing it for Chicago lately. They may have a future first baseman for the next couple of years. Schwindel, oh my gosh, he was doing good in Oakland. Oakland, he cooled off. Oakland got rid of him. Chicago picked him up. Heck of a signing. If I were to give that a grade, I would give an A+ to the Frank Schwindel signing. Maybe you can keep him for a couple years. Maybe you can try to turn him and see if someone gives you something for him, after the season comes to an end. Great signing with him. Wilson Contreras has had a down year. So, you've kind of needed a couple of players to stand up. And Schwindel right now is probably the best hitter in Chicago on the in the Cubs organization. I can't say in Chicago. So, A+ for that one. Unfortunately for them, though, Kyle Hendricks on the pitching side, he has not been doing as well as you'd hope. Last place, we have Pittsburgh. And I say this every time. Is anyone surprised Pittsburgh's in last? They are somewhat competitive. They're only 10.5 games behind Chicago right now. But still, they're on the outside. They're not going to make a playoff run this year, obviously. Ke'Bryan Hayes has been one of the bigger disappointments to an extent. There was a lot of hype surrounding him this year. So, seeing Ke'Bryan Hayes not doing well, it is what it is. And Adam Frazier and Brian Reynolds, both those guys, great players this year. Of course, they did trade away Frazier, but Reynolds has still been a great player, so I will give them credit for those two. Next, we have the NL West. San Francisco currently leads this division by 1 game over LA. Both of these teams, San Francisco and LA, are the second and third teams to clinch the playoffs that we're going to discuss. I think San Fran was first. Yeah, San Fran was first, LA was second, Milwaukee was third. But yep, San Diego sits a decent spot behind LA. Colorado behind them. Arizona, sorry guys. San Francisco, they're a little cold right now, but I'm never going to count out this team again. As a Phillies fan, Gabe Kapler just made me scratch my head when the Giants hired him. I'm like, why would you hire this guy? The guy stinks. Yeah, at least I didn't say I'll eat my hat if the Giants make the playoffs this year. They've been a very interesting, surprising team. A lot of their offense has just been producing. Buster Posey's having a career year to an extent. So, and this is a guy who's probably going to make the Hall of Fame if he can have another couple solid years. So, Brandon Belt's doing good. Brandon Crawford's just dominating right now. Darren Ruff is back in from the rough, I guess you could say. He started to produce again. Pitching-wise, DeSclafani's turned it around. He had a hot start. He has cooled off a bit since, but still, this team, I don't know who the heck works in the Giants scouting department, but whoever it is, whoever can work with these pitchers, they need a head coaching job ASAP. LA, the Dodgers are essentially, a super team, just like the Golden State Warriors. So, this team is stacked. You can't find a better pitching staff than what they have. Maybe on paper San Diego could rival them, but this pitching staff is arguably comparable, if not better than the early 2010s Phillies pitching staff. I'm not going to compare them tooth and nail because the Dodgers would probably win that comparison since the Phillies only have one Hall of Famer and the Dodgers have probably two, maybe three. So we'll have to see what happens. But the Dodgers pitching staff, Clayton Kershaw is Clayton Kershaw. Scherzer is doing Scherzer things. Urias is dominating right now. So Walker Buehler, I almost forgot to mention him. He's been one of, if not the best pitcher in baseball right now. So, this year. So, and that's not even counting their offense. I can go on and on about this team in general. Of course, there's so many good players to discuss. AJ Pollock's been one of the hotter players in baseball. At least he was in July. He's been okay since. Trey Turner does what Trey Turner does. Justin Turner's doing what Justin Turner does. The biggest disappointment for this team, Cody Bellinger, that's all I'm going to say. He's hitting like a $140 or $150, so it's never good. Anyway, San Diego here. Tatis is probably the front runner for the NL MVP award. It's him versus Bryce Harper. So at least you got that going for you if you're a Padres fan. But this has to be a disappointing season, and it's not necessarily the Padres' fault. Tatis has been dealing with injuries the whole season. It started off in spring training, I think. He dealt with that shoulder injury, and we're still hearing about it today. The pitching staff, Clevenger had to undergo Tommy John. Blake Snell's been Blake Snell, so he's Blake Snell. He's Blake Snell. He's not doing good. That's all I can say about Blake Snell. But, does he deserve that? I want to know if he thinks he's okay with that. I think he's at a silver card now in MLB The Show. Maybe even a bronze, so I'm curious if he's okay with that. Kind of want to ask him. But, Adam Frazier, once they got him, a lot of people were hyping him up, and I was kind of like, listen, the problem is they're not going to use him as a full-time starter. Unfortunately, I was right. But still, it'd be nice to see him play some more. Jake Cronenworth's been one of the better batters recently, too. So he just came back from an IL stint, I believe. If not an IL stint, he was just out for a few games. So hopefully he can continue his momentum. That's the only way the Padres really have a chance. At the same time, I hope they don't. Colorado is doing better than I was expecting them to. There's not too much to say about Colorado. They had just traded away their star player in Arenado. And the real question with Colorado, of course, I'm looking at next season for them. Are they going to be able to keep Trevor Story, or is Story going to walk? Because after what they did with Nolan Arenado, why should he sign and give them a hometown discount? Trevor Story is the best player in that team. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So that's all I'm going to say about them. John Gray, though, he's been a decent player lately. Germán Marquez has kind of regressed slightly. And I do want to give a quick shout out to Elias Diaz. I haven't mentioned him at all. He's been doing pretty good from the catcher position. Last place, Arizona. Not surprising. This team, every single video, I'm not going to mention it in the description today because I'm going to mention it here. Why did you guys sign Madison Bumgarner? I still don't understand that signing. And it's been 2 years since you made that signing. Arizona, you're going to have another tough season next year. They get some good players in trades, and then they trade them away. They sign some okay players, and then they trade them away. You have a bright future. You have a lot of young, talented outfielders in the system, but it's going to be some time, unfortunately, for Arizona. And unfortunately, Zach Gallen, who is projected to be one of the bigger breakouts of the season, he hasn't played as well. He has dealt with some injuries, so yeah. Lastly, we have the NL East. Now, obviously, Atlanta currently leads this division. Philly's behind them. New York's behind them. Then you have Miami and Washington. Atlanta, they've surprised me. When Ronald Acuna Jr. went down with that torn ACL, I essentially thought the season was over for Atlanta. I thought, okay, maybe they're going to be sellers at the deadline. Freeman's a pending free agent. Maybe they'll trade him away. No, they bought at the deadline. And they have proved me wrong. They've had so many players playing well lately. This team, they want to play. Dansby Swanson has cooled off considerably, but Freeman is still producing. The outfielders that they brought in, Eddie Rosario, I think just hit a cycle yesterday. So, this team is ready to play. They're ready for the playoffs. Their pitching staff, they're hoping to get them stretched out a little bit more. Max Fried and Huascar Ynoa are both guys that they're hoping to get stretched out a bit more for a potential playoff run. But it's not going to be easy for them to make the playoffs because it is, but it isn't. But the Phillies are kind of breathing down their necks. And listen, I'm a Phillies fan, so I understand that the Phillies suck against garbage teams for whatever reason. But the rest of their season schedule has them playing Baltimore, Miami, I believe Atlanta, and Baltimore, Miami, Washington, and Atlanta, I'm pretty sure. I'm a little unsure about the Washington aspect. So that's not a tough schedule. You should be able to take out some of those teams. I'm hoping they can make a playoff run. So the Phillies, this is Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper, to me, I would give him my MVP vote over Tatis. Of course, I'm a biased Phillies fan. I realize that. I'm sure a lot of people will give it to Tatis over him. But if Harper can have a good last 2 weeks of the season and the Phillies make the playoffs, Harper should be the MVP in my opinion. So I love what Harper's been doing this year. He's been having I'm going to say it, underrated season. Other than him, though, Zach Wheeler started off the season red hot. He has been a little inconsistent since, especially in September. Unfortunately, Zach Eflin done for the year. Aaron Nola hasn't been looking that good. So Kyle Gibson's been about as advertised. He gets you a quality start. The bullpen hasn't been producing. They have been blowing some games, which unfortunately is a theme in Philadelphia. So it is what it is. But the Phillies, one of the bigger disappointments as a player has to be Alec Bohm. So, it is what it is. Rhys Hoskins, if he was healthy, I feel like this team could make a playoff run. But without Rhys, I don't know. New York hangs in third place right now in this division. The Mets, this is a team that they should be doing better than they're doing. So should the Phillies, but it is what it is. The Mets, they spent so much money in free agency. They just went out. They just acquired Javier Baez. He's a pending free agent, so they're going to either have to pay a ton of money to him to keep him, or they're going to lose all of Pete Crow Armstrong for nothing. So the Mets, if deGrom was healthy, I think they'd be ahead of the Phillies in the standings. So deGrom possibly could get an MVP vote or two. Still, I like what the Mets bring to the table. I hope they can kind of get their act together for the next couple of years, but at the same time, I hope they don't. Miami sits in fourth place. A lot of people were saying Miami's going to be a playoff team this year, and I kind of said no, I don't think they're going to be. I think, I might get some hate for this, but yeah, unfortunately, I was right. The Marlins had a hot couple months last year. They made the playoffs. That's what the Marlins are. They play the Phillies well, which really frustrates me as a Phillies fan, but they're a solid team. They keep games close. Their pitching staff isn't elite, but they do have some good names. Of course, Trevor Rogers has been one of the big names before he missed a month due to a personal reason. But outside of him, Pablo Lopez has been good, but he might not come back for the rest of the season. So we'll have to see how the Marlins do. Offensively, they don't have a lot of big bats, but they have a lot of older veterans that people respect. So last place, we have the Nationals. The Mighty have really fallen from 2019's World Series. A lot of those key players are gone now. I think they kind of phoned it in. They gave up on the season once Strasburg was done for the year. They're like, all right, there's no point in competing anymore. Sell a farm, sell our players, get a new farm system. They have a bright future, but you really got to wonder how much longer they're going to keep Strasburg on the team and how much longer they're going to try to be relevant, especially in the NL East. We'll see. Anyway, I know this was a much longer video than I was anticipating. I just had so much to say about all these teams. The next standing update video will be right before the playoffs. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a good rest of your day.